This is Music Tech, keeping hope and growth alive in the time of COVID-19. I'm pleased to have Milana Lewis, the CEO and founder of STEM, with us today. Juan Dueñas, co-founder of My Mixtapes and CEO and founder of ViRii, and Robb McDaniels, the CEO of Beatport. Today's panel, I'm super excited about this one because you guys are all helping artists right now and creating opportunities for people when a lot of the different opportunities they've been engaged in previously have disappeared. So each of you has business ideas right now that you're executing and having success and growth. And I really want to take today to talk about what's going on with you and your companies in this time, what's changing, how are you responding, and how is the atmosphere around us impacting you and the people who are your clients. Robb, I want to start with you because one of the things that as the head of Beatport, and you and I had spoken, and you said that Beatport specifically never really got into the live events business, right? And now you've accidentally found yourself in it. So what triggered that? Tell me a little bit about how you found yourself walking down that road.
Well, we were affiliated with the live events business through our sister companies, the Lifestyle. So, but we watched that from afar and didn't get too involved in the daily, nitty gritty of it all. But what we really wanted to do when we started the Reconnect back at the end of March was do something for our community that really needed help, and that's what we started out simply wanting to help the DJs that both buy and sell their music on Beatport connect more directly with their fans, recognize that they were, back didn't know how long it would be for, but that they were going to be out of work for quite some time, and but there was still this need to, listen to music and use music to help heal and connect with each other, and so that was the initial premise for launching this online music series. And just it became even more successful than we anticipated, and we plan on continuing it now throughout this crisis and probably beyond.
And you were able to raise quite a bit of money for philanthropies out of what you were doing with Reconnect so far, right?
Yeah, so we raised money for mostly companies that are part of the Association for Electronic Music, and also some of the COVID, WHO funds and so forth. So we raised about $250,000, and again, that was largely because the great DJs that had performing, bringing fans in, and they all performed for free. But yeah, I mean, we've had over 22 million views, I think now, and again, it meant a lot to the electronic music community around the world, and we had DJs from India, Australia, South Africa, obviously places like Berlin and Los Angeles, over 2 events, and now we're doing smaller Reconnect events, sort of focused on specific genres or supported by specific labels as well.
And do you expect that you'll continue doing Reconnect after this is over, now that it's established and you've sort of gotten your feet wet?
Well, we're trying to figure out, like everybody else. Certainly I think this is the start of something as it relates to sort of the online music festival. I think that people adapted pretty quickly. I friends who have teenage kids that or college age kids that would gather around their computers and have the festival on and have their six pack and their joints and all interact with their friends on FaceTime or whatever while they're watching the festival. So I think the fans actually adapted pretty quickly. I think the question is, how do we create an economic model around that? And I think that's going to some time to fall into place, but I think there are a few different options for us to, not only create promotional value, but real economic value around the online festival, and also make it feel more intimate and authentic, even if you can't be actually at a festival, because it's probably going to be a while before that's going to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, we have a conversation that'll happen that's talking specifically about that, with what exactly can you do to recreate this environment of a festival or concert when you're at home. And I think, we're all first year film students, we're all first year set designers, we're all first year sound designers now, and to recreate that feeling at home, what does that look like? So I'm excited to see it. And also, very few people are monetizing it so far. There are a handful of artists who have made the decision to start charging for various live streams, Erykah Badu being one of them, and she was doing $1 a ticket, and then went up to $2 and $3. And, so I think we're starting to see people come up with products that people will buy tickets for. Milana, I want to come to you next, because I feel like there are so many artists who are scratching their heads wondering, what comes next and how they're going to figure it out. And you at STEM have some really great things going on right now. And you are in a position to write checks for artists and give them a type of deal that they've never seen before. So why don't you share a little bit about what you're up to?
Yeah, definitely. So on that end, we launched a new product called Scale, which is really our response to a system where we believe artists don't have the ability to control the terms of the money they're taking, right? Oftentimes they're chasing a big dollar amount, but they end up giving up not only a big percentage of ownership, but oftentimes having to pay pretty high fees on that, and don't really understand what the economic terms are they're signing up for. And so Scale came out of our attempt to make the process of accessing capital to grow your business for an artist, who we think of artists as small, medium, large businesses, the same way that you look at other businesses in the economy. And we noticed that they just, until they're a certain size, don't really have that much optionality. And what we thought would be really important to articulate really clearly is making sure artists have the ability to understand how long it's going to take for them to pay down the advance, how much they're going to have to pay off when they take the money, and more than anything, have the ability to choose, do they take more money and pay it down slower and take a bigger fee, or less money, pay it down quicker and control the amount that they're paying for the capital, knowing that they can continue to tap in for the funds as they grow their business. And so we launched that officially in the beginning of February. We've been testing it for the last 6 months with a handful of our existing clients, and we had no idea that we would be able to do it, that the sort of timing would work out in a COVID world, right? We were thinking about this as an alternative, pre-existing the conditions in the climate. And it just happened to be that COVID happened, and a lot of artists found themselves realizing that the money that they were banking on because of touring wasn't going to come together for the year. And as a result of that, we started having real conversations with our artists who were coming to us saying, hey, I just lost a big portion of the revenue I was expecting. I need money to help close the gap. And we started exploring options at Scale, so much so that I think in a week we had over $18 million requested. And it was shocking to us how the money was coming, how the requests were coming from artists of all sizes, right? It was checks as small as $1,000 to checks as large as $10 million. And so this was, the impact financially was really occurring across all artists in the sector, not just small artists, not just really big ones, like everyone's impacted. And we're proud to be able to offer this at a time, but we also realize that the money we're offering has a fee, and there are many other options out there in the market that offer no fee capital, right? Like there were a couple advances and relief funds put together in the private sector by organizations, by other companies. And we really encourage and try to educate our clients across the board of all of them, because we want to make sure that they're accessing capital in a sustainable way for themselves. And should they still find our opportunity enticing, we're more than happy to provide it for them.
Right. And what's the, what is the application process? What is some of the information and the conversation with the artists that you require before? Because, you know, I'd love $10 million, but I'm pretty sure that I'm going to fail the questions required to get that advance. You know, what does that look like?
Definitely. And that was the big thing that we really wanted to simplify, was what information we required. And the goal for us was to make the experience such that an artist can get money in their bank account that same week. And so if you're an existing STEM artist, you just log into your dashboard and you have a new tab called Scale. And we actually tell you the amount that you pre-qualify for, and you select your own terms and then you submit it to us for review. And we don't need anything else. We don't need a guarantee. We don't run your credit, nothing. We just look at your revenue history in STEM and we'll approve the advance. We issue you paperwork probably within 24 to 48 hours. It's a 3-page document that we try to make as easy to read without a lawyer as possible. And once you sign it, we can issue the money within the next day and you get it in your bank account, usually within 3 to 4 business days from there. For clients who are not in STEM, we oftentimes ask them to send us their revenue from their existing distributor. We can't offer advances against unless the catalog that they're looking to leverage is in our system. So we might have to have them transfer catalog into STEM. And right now, that's the way that it works. We obviously have ambitions for being able to offer scale advances to people who are not distributed through STEM. But what really is exciting about it is that we don't care what you use the money for. Of course, we'd love for you to use it towards creating new content, marketing existing content. But if you're using it to pay rent, that's okay. We're not going to dictate the use of proceeds. And on top of that, you could take money from STEM if you're not the artist, but just a shareholder. So it's a great offering for producers and songwriters. They get paid a share for music that's distributed through STEM through our splits. And
is it possible that you guys will start looking at artists' record deals and trying to potentially buy them out of the deal and basically come back to them with a better offering?
You know, I think that's, you know, we've had artists come to us for the STEM Check program that we launched, I think it was like 6 to 8 months ago, where artists were coming to us with their record deals so that we could help write a financial model so they could evaluate the opportunity. In most cases, the amount of money that they'd be looking for to buy themselves out of the deal goes beyond what the Scale product offers. But, you know, we do have relationships with a number of financial institutions where if there's an opportunity that makes sense, we can definitely introduce partners to each other with private investors and funds that specialize in doing so.
So let's go to you, Juan. You know, I think part of what you've done is with My Mixtapes is your first company, and ViRvii with your new one. You know, I want to focus more on ViRvii, but I also want to hear a little bit about how the first company has helped you grow the second one. And I think you have some news to share with us too, right?
Yeah, the Facebook announcement should be, when this is aired, should be out. We are one of their big bets they have in VR going forward, and started this project last year, and now it's like more in demand than ever. Like, again, like Milana was saying, we never planned that there was gonna be a COVID pandemic and everyone needed VR like tomorrow. So we're still building that. We're trying to get to it as fast as we can. Going back to the, you know, everything that I'm doing now, I kind of learned, you know, the hard way through My Mixtapes, which is all great knowledge to gain. And we're just talking about the fact that, you know, My Mixtapes was also created during the last recession, which was more real estate and financial, but all in the same. It was very difficult to raise capital. It was the end of the world. Everything was going to be gone. And at the end of the day, we came out of it better and stronger and better for it. And because of My Mixtapes, actually, that's how the whole VR thing started, because of the size of the app, Facebook gave us like the first Oculus development kit in 2015, and I brought it to the office. I introduced it to a lot of, you know, rappers and managers, and I remember, like, I had G Herbo's manager at the office. I'm like, here, put this on, and he was like, man, but this is great and all, but who's gonna wear this shit in the hood? Nobody's gonna wear this in the hood. And I'm like, yeah, but, you know, I'm talking about 5 years from now, when it's like the size of your sunglasses or something. And then I just kept watching the VR market get better and better and better. And then I moved here like 2 years ago, and started getting to a 10-year itch of being CEO of a company. You always get that, you know, am I still as good as I was, or maybe it's time for a change. And it didn't help that there hasn't been very big innovations in streaming in a while. We kind of all look the same. You know, everyone's played pause. All the innovations that really come from platforms like, you know, Milana's, Beatport, and all these other stuff, big data, AI. So I started just going around LA looking for someone to kind of add VR to my mixtapes type code, and I had no takers. And then I met one of my co-founders, and I told him, look, you know, this is the way that I want to do VR. It's completely different how it's being done today. He said, look, I can definitely do that. We did a demo, put a deck together. I called a bunch of the music industry people that I know. I showed it to them, went to visit Warner Music in New York, talked to the people here at Universal. They all said, look, yeah, if you can develop a new experience, medium, whatever, we're cool with it. Never thinking that it was going to be needed, like I said, like in a couple months. I was actually in San Francisco closing the last deal before they actually locked everything down. So just been overwhelming, the demand that we've had. We're still months away from launching, but between now and us launching, we are going to be releasing parts of the platform out for musicians and for companies to test. Like our AI, we want to release that in beta to some artists that can help them basically either allocate, you know, where they want to do their media funds. It can be used just to check and gauge like where, you know, their capital is coming in from. So it's going to be interesting what these tools will do for artists going forward.
So it seems like STEM can issue some of the money as a loan as part of the Scale program to create the VR world with you.
Yeah, I mean, Milana knows. I just someone that I sent the deck to very early on to take a look at it. So I think like everyone that's in this is like one small piece of solving this thing that's going to be here for a while. I think like whether you're an artist that wants to turn your old catalog into his new medium, his new VR experience, you're going to need money because it's very expensive, and we're trying to get as many big artists into it so that way the cost goes down for the up and coming artists, you know.
So are you going to be working on sort of one lead artist project to get started? Or are you going to, what do you think the first thing that we're going to see will be?
We're trying to do something quick with something that we can do quickly with like UTA. We were trying to do like some kind of a better version of the DJ battle or the verses that's going on right now. Mm-hmm. So we're like, look, let's use one part of our platform to solve that. AI is another thing. So we're trying to like, as we build the final product, be able to get some of these out because it's so needed right now. So yeah, we're trying to get it to everyone as fast as we can.
I'm excited to see it, and I'm sure there's a whole lot of artists and everyone around them. You know, we've seen a few iterations of people. Travis Scott with his recent show. Yeah. You know, how will what you're working on be in comparison with that? What are some kind of differences?
I think the way that I wanted to approach VR is more in the abstract and more immersive. Not really trying to replicate reality inside the virtual. I think we don't like right now. Reality sucks by all means, you know, by all attempts, right? Like, why would you want to be inside of a concert inside of a VR? You would rather be in space or underwater or wherever. So we're going to be working with artists to build those worlds for them. And obviously the bigger artists that have like, you know, the Purple Rains, the Yellow Submarines, or you know, the Chronic, let's say, like those guys, you know, those projects can be built and they would scale down to the smaller artists, right? Because you don't have to build it twice. So that's basically where we're going with that.
And I think one of the questions I have, since both of you brought it up in terms of, well, we've referenced it, I don't know that Milana brought it up, but in terms of raising capital in the early part of this year and kind of the conversations, I guess, Milana, maybe you were involved in those last year, it sounds like, right?
I'm always involved in them.
And I think one of the things we're hoping to accomplish with the conference and some of the conversations is really a lot of people maybe who have been laid off or furloughed are probably sitting around going, okay, well, how can I take what I do and maybe start a company? What can I do creatively to start building my own thing? Because relying on some of the big businesses that have historically employed isn't really happening. You know, in the live event space for certain, a lot of the big companies have done massive workforce reductions over the last few weeks, and certainly in touring. So as people are sitting around and thinking about it, and even for myself, it's a process I've never gone through. I've gone through companies being acquired, but what is that conversation and kind of the initial outreach, meeting with somebody and asking for money? You know, I'll kind of kick it back to you all to share what you can about your experience raising. I know, Milana, you've done it more than once, so why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think, listen, raising money from the outside, I can only really speak to when it comes to building like a venture tech business, right? I don't know what it's like to raise money for a services business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very different. I think that early stage investors probably are going to be making the same amount of investments. It's just later stage capital is much harder when your valuation is really dependent on how other companies in your space are valued, right? In which case they're kind of inflated in the software world, and the stock market brought down a lot of those valuations for the later stage companies. But for early stage companies, I think it's going to be not too much impacted. I think there's a huge opportunity for people who have been in the ticketing space and the marketing space, because one of the things that I feel like the recorded music side just doesn't have a great grasp on still is e-commerce tactics, right? How do you think about driving audiences to consume music on streaming or to buy music online the same way you do as an e-commerce business when you're trying to sell tickets or you're trying to sell merch or brands or anything that's like in the CPG space online. And I think that a lot of the tactics that people who work in the live event business understand and know can really easily be applied to other businesses. And I think it's about, you know, how do you leverage that expertise and apply it to a business that is still doing well? Because it's not going to be that dissimilar to driving audiences to Patreon channels or to pay for a live event that's happening online. I think that the skill sets are still going to be really necessary. And so if you're someone who's, you know, been furloughed and been working at a management company or an agency or at a live events company where that's no longer a role that's available to you, I would highly encourage you to think about, how do I create a consulting practice around this? Because there's tons of other businesses who could use that today.
Right. And Juan, what about you? What about your experience raising money, especially, you know, in with your launch of the new company?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we'll keep this in, but the whole reason I got into apps was because I think in 2006, the database company that I was with had a bad stock market day or week or something. And I remember my boss coming in is like, hey, I'm going to have to let you go. And I'm like, why? He's like, oh no, we've had some financial troubles and the stock is down and we want to let you go. And I told him, but why? I've trained, I've done everything possible to be a great employee. And he told me, look outside that window. And there was a guy named Steve. There's always a guy named Steve was smoking a cigarette or something outside. He's like, Steve is 50 years old. If I let him go, no one's going to hire Steve. But if I let you go, you're like 25, 26, you'll bounce back on your feet and anyone will hire you. And I remember that day, like, and that job gave me everything, a car, a cell phone at the time, a laptop. And I remember I had to call my best friend, hey, come pick me up. They just laid me off. And I was heading home and I'm like, I never want to feel like this again. And I want to make my own company and never treat people like this. So 4 years later, I'm starting this new platform from that experience, a new company. And there's a recession that hits like towards the end of 2008, 2009. And we're like, my brother's like, oh, I want to build a hip hop streaming only platform. And we went into meetings and people were like, get the fuck out of our office. Like, are you crazy? Like, you need to put everything, and hip hop is just this small niche thing. And we're like, no, we're going to stick with it. And it really came, oh, sorry about that. It really came from a need. It really came from a need of trying to prove those guys wrong at first. You get this thing, oh, I'm going to show everyone that we can do it. And then it just becomes just something that you do, and you start loving and you start growing, caring about the users. So I think like anybody right now that's lost their job and is in that place there is a lot of opportunity right now. Everything is becoming digital. There's no more radio runs. There's no, if you're starting a music label right now, everyone is on the same plane right now. Everyone is with the same issues, with their wives are teaching their kids, or they have all these things, everyone's in the same. So the power of the music industry is that I think you're hot or you're popping in New York or in Alabama or wherever, and I can get you that private jet ticket, or I can get you that first class ticket to fly you in and wine it and get you in the big table and do the whole thing. That's gone. So, you know, whether you're Beatport or you're STEM, there's no difference. Actually, these companies can actually monetize you much quicker. And now, so what is the need? Marketing, search optimization, all these things are going to be huge again, because no one's doing that. And you can't, they weren't ready to be working from home. No one was. So if I was young again, starting again, that's what I would do. I would say, okay, what is it that I can start up right now? And again, whether you're a Fortune 500 company or you're a guy and his brother or his friend starting the next company, we're all in the same boat right now.
It feels like there's like a much greater opportunity for independent companies, and Robb, you sort of operate like one, and on some levels, I know you're under a corporate umbrella at this point, but from my perspective, it seems like some of the giants of entertainment seem very human now, in a way where a lot of the established businesses they have some resources, but we're seeing that they're having to take these steps in the face of COVID to survive. And it takes them longer to respond to things, and they have to really dive in. And because they're such big established companies, you're all in positions to be much more nimble right now. And in terms of opportunity for entrepreneurs, it feels like the playing field is more level right now. I don't know if I'm the only one who feels that way. I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, well, just to clear up, actually, Beatport at the end of last year became an independent company as Lifestyle has divested itself of its live business. We've been growing steadily over the last few years, and the investor group that bought SFX out of bankruptcy has been very pleased with what we're doing. So just to clear that up. So we do get to be nimble, sort of dictate our own strategy. Business has been growing steadily, as I said, over the last couple of years, and through this crisis, as more people have they're spending more time at home and learning how to DJ, we've seen a huge uptick, especially in the rate of adoption for Link, which is our technology that brings streaming to the DJ booth. And there's so much that can be said by any of us on this about this topic. This is a massive topic that probably is deserving of a lot more time. Sure. Challenges of raising money or starting businesses at any point in sort of the life cycle of the business environment present their own challenges, and certainly starting a business during a crisis, there's certainly benefits to that. It's a great time to be an entrepreneur. Great time to you have the time on your hands to just simply write a good business plan, which is the foundation for any great idea that you might have in any new business. So, look, I think that I'll try to be succinct with my comments. if you look at history, which is a great sort of guide for what's going to come, there's a shock to the global system every 4 or 5 years, a shock of some kind, whether it's a currency crisis, a banking crisis, a real estate crisis, a virus crisis, a war, God forbid, or just gigantic egos that are running various countries. So those shocks tend to force people to be more precise, and it sort of, it shakes out all of the companies that don't have a real business, or companies that have been struggling for a long time, the ones that aren't healthy. It's actually good for the system. And it also can inspire people that have been laid off, that weren't heard at their respective companies. Their great ideas were just kind of pushed down, that those people are now going to create the company that replaces the one that they were at. So this is just part of the cycle. And I think that for entrepreneurs who are thinking about this, go for it, quit, leverage all the resources and relationships that you have, come up with a good idea, and just know that it's not easy. And the other people on this call will support this. Like, if you are like, oh my God, I can just start and change this part of the world. Okay, yeah, but you're gonna think about it 20 hours a day, and while you sleep, and you're gonna have to work your tail off, and you're gonna have the door shut on you 100 times and tell you can't do that. That's not possible. And the ones that succeed are the ones that just believe more than anybody else. And so I would just always encourage those entrepreneurs to stick with it until they can't stick to it anymore for whatever reason.
And Milana, what do you think in terms of this being a good time to get started and dive in and try some things that maybe you haven't before?
Yeah, I mean, to what Rob said, unless the idea haunts you, don't just start a company to start a company. It is entirely too painful to do that. I think being a consultant and trying to freelance is one thing, but really starting a business and bringing on employees and having a team to manage and a P&L is entirely different, right? I think that the time, no one knows anything. So I think someone said this before, it's neutralizing, right? Everyone's playing with the same cards effectively, and no one knows the rules for the new future. So if you have a vision for what they are, be bold, try it, but don't do it unless you legitimately cannot sleep unless you do it. And that's the moment that you got to try it, because it haunts you. Yeah, I think
I love that no one knows anything comment, because I think we've all had people who are in positions who have been in established companies or in positions of power, and one of my least favorite character traits is people stating opinion as fact. And I think as anybody kind of walks through their experience as an entrepreneur, those responses, people will just say, well, you can't do that. And I always like to say, well, what you're really saying is, I think you can't do that, because nobody can predict the future. And certainly the moment we're in right now, while I agree, we go through a cycle and a challenge or a crisis, on a regular recurring basis. Certainly what we're facing right now is something different than what we've seen before. And people's behavior right now has changed radically. And we're just everybody is starting fresh with, okay, well, what are the new rules today? What can and can't we do? And how is that going to impact our ability to continue?
But the best entrepreneurs aren't thinking of the rules today. They're thinking about how this impacts in 2 or 3 years.
Yep. It's interesting. I was talking to one of my investor friends who gave me his framework for how he evaluates deals. And it's actually really relevant, I think, to how entrepreneurs should evaluate their own ideas, which is, what do you believe, like, what's your big bet you want to make, right? And then what are all the things that need to be true in order for that bet to happen? And what are the sequential hypotheses you're going to come up with and you need to prove in order for that vision to be real, right? Because the vision that you might have as an idea is something like, to what Rob said, is 3 to 5 years out, but there's little hypotheses that you need to prove in sequence in order for the big vision to be proved out. And so if you think about, like, what is your idea, and you break it up into that framework, then all you need to think about is, what do I need to prove first, right? And once I do that, then what do I need to prove to be true? Because it's all hypothesis. Being an entrepreneur is just being being really good at running science experiments.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I've found over the last 2 decades is, as an entrepreneur, you're like laser focused on your product and you have blinders on. And the most important thing for you to do is take a step back, get perspective, and think about, as I'm saying, the rest of the ecosystem that you rely on for your product to be adopted, reach scale, and generate profit. And so often entrepreneurs they've developed the best widget ever created, but then think about these other things that have to fall into place for that widget to actually sell and make money.
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do just want to kind of ask the question of, what are you seeing? What's the inspiration you're seeing out there right now? Whether that's something in your company that you're seeing, or with the people who are connected to your company in terms of clients or customers. What are you seeing that's inspiring? Juan, let's start with you.
One of the things is, again, this is everyone's talking about, that no one knows anything. Like, starting this company, I've never had to start a company during a pandemic, where some of the employees that we're hiring I've never met, and I probably won't see them for maybe, let's say, the rest of the year. So that's been very strange, but it's also a lot of luck, because if we get our funding from Facebook like a week before or a month before, this idea dies, because we would have went to Austin to rent some offices. I would have got an office that was looking here at LA. I was going to hire this guy. We're going to throw a big party. Everything was normal up until 2 months ago. So by luck, we got the investment after the COVID struck. We had to quickly ramp up and change. Magically wound up laying off like 1,200 people. So we're, the opportunity to grab talent and just take all these pieces that we know has been really, really good for us. But also being, having empathy for the people that are losing their jobs and all this stuff. So it's kind of a tricky, like, hey, I'm doing great, but the rest of the people around me are in pain or suffering. So it's a weird time. For sure.
I think it's and we've got a talk that's going to be addressing it, but it's kind of there is a lot of talent out there right now, and I think it's important for people to know that people are still hiring. There are companies that are growing. There is opportunity. Yes, we see Milana, and that, if you're paying attention and looking, you can find these things. And I think as employers, it's a great time to be like, oh wow, it's like every NFL team just gave up their players, and now it's like, oh wait, you mean I can have this quarterback and this receiver, and wow, you just get this, you have the opportunity to pull people who probably would have never left those companies for years. Milana, do you want to jump in on what you're seeing that's inspiring you right now?
Yeah, we have a little bit of decision-making paralysis right now, just because there's so many amazing people that just were furloughed or have come up into the market. Engineering talent in LA is incredibly competitive, and some of the best companies just laid off tremendous amounts of talent that are available in the market. And so for us, it's a question of really being thoughtful about how we're allocating resources and the types of people we want to prioritize hiring to take advantage of the free market versus people who we are willing or comfortable sort of realizing that it's ahead of when we would typically hire them and we don't need to take on the expense. But one thing we are finding ourselves doing a lot more is getting more creative in the way that we can engage people that we work with, right? So how can we bring on people as a consultant or on a part-time basis instead of a full-time basis, so that it enables them to stay busy and make money on the side while they're figuring out their next move, and it gives us the value of what they can contribute to our business. So my advice to people who are in those situations is really think about, like, what are your strengths and unique skills, and what are companies that may not need that full time, but where a little bit of that is still really meaningful to them, and it could potentially provide you with additional income while you're in this position of trying to figure out your next thing.
Rob, you want to take us home?
Sure. If I remember the question, it was sort of what's inspiring me right now about what's going on.
What are you seeing either at your own company or outside that's inspiring you? You know, I think the news is, you know, it's so much about everything that's bad and going wrong. And what we've discovered as we put this conference together, I mean, you know, thanks to Milana, I now know Juan and got to discover his company. And there's some other people who I didn't know before putting this thing together, and have discovered all these really interesting and uplifting stories about some things that are going well. And so I just sort of throw it out there, you know, whether it's just in the world in general, in your neighborhood, or at the company, you know, what you've seen during this crisis and situation where there's a good story.
Sure. So the reality is that unfortunately we're only 2 months into what could be a 12-month, 24-month sort of issue for the music industry. We still don't know. And so we may only be sort of 10 to 20% of the way through this. And so it's unfortunately going to get worse before it's better for people. That'll come back one day eventually, and people will find a way, and maybe we can't gather at, you know, the polo grounds in Indio for a little while and places like that. But, oh, hell, you know, maybe there'll be more house parties that people will have, and all of a sudden business model will pop up, you know, having to do with house parties. And if so, some of these. But I mean, I've been inspired by first and foremost the people at Beatport and all the employees that have really responded well to this entire crisis and gone above and beyond just to not only do the daily tasks, but, you know, as I was saying, also just think creatively, outside the box, try to things. Now's the time to do it, because you can always blame COVID if it goes wrong. So you may as well stuff. And I was really inspired by the reaction from the artist community to what we wanted to do with our RIC series, and the way that they volunteered their time. And it's not just the hour-long DJ set. You know, they spend hours and hours in their own production dollars to produce whatever, you know.
Uh-oh. I think we might have lost. You there, Rob?
Uh-oh. Did you lose me?
I think you can I'd say wrap it. Yeah, we can hear you a little bit. Try again.
I was just talking about and the production that they put in for the Reconnect series, and how it always seemed to me that when there's a crisis in the world, it's the musicians in the world that actually stood up and responded and gave their time in exchange for donations. So I've been really pleased to see that happen.
And I think it's been really incredible to see the results of what your fundraising efforts have achieved, which ties in perfectly to the closeout here, which is, you know, we made a decision to produce this conference virtually, which is a new thing for us. So we're experimenting here as we go. We initially were going to have a small registration fee and some exceptions for people who couldn't afford it. And we made the decision to do it for free. We are asking if people will consider donating to one of a couple charities. World Central Kitchen, which is a food bank related project. Film to Future, which is about educating at-risk diverse kids here in Los Angeles. And Music Cares, which is a great organization that's got a long history of helping people in the music business through hard times. So if you are in a position and you would have paid for a registration and you still are in that, we'd love for you to make a donation. There's information on the website at ampmusicsummit.com, and we'd love to have you. Thank you, all of you, for taking time today. I really appreciate it. Some valuable insights, and I'm sure that people watching will enjoy learning from the three of you. Thank you so much.